I was stuck, Stuck in a job that I hated, working for a boss who made it his mission to tear you down just to feel better about himself. His name? David. And if there's one thing I can tell you, it's that David didn't deserve the position he had. But there he was, riding around in his golf cart, clipboard in hand, looking for anyone to humiliate. New hires, especially the temporary ones, were his favorite target. And when it came to me, I wasn't immune. My name is Jeff, and I worked for Move Easy Logistics Company in Dallas, Texas. This particular company did not hire directly for dock workers. You had to go through a temp-to-hire service. And logistics company had a 90-day window in which the dock super, in this case David, could call your temp agency and tell them your stint at logistics company is over. The temp would be called into the office where David would look at them and say with a large, shit-eating grin, "It's just not working out." You see, David wasn't a manager. He was a bully with a title. His job? A joke. He didn't even do the work, he made me do it. I'd be the one typing up reports at the end of every shift, the one running around doing his job for him while he sat in his office. And when he did show up on the floor, it wasn't to help or motivate. It was to look for someone to pick on. This prick would ridicule new temps about the way they dressed. Industrial temp workers usually are quite poor. He picked on how they talked, mannerisms, you name it, in front of everyone at shift meetings. When a new batch of temps would start, he would pick an unlucky one out and ride him or her until they quit or made some minor mistake that he would chalk up to the temp agency as the reason this person is not working out. Every few weeks, he'd find someone new to target. Maybe it was the way they dressed. Who knows? He'd tear them apart for it. Or maybe their accent wasn't up to his standard. Doesn't matter what it was. David would find something, anything, to make them feel small. And when they finally couldn't take it anymore, or made a mistake, he'd call the temp agency and say, "It's just not working out." David was married to some big shot at a hospital in town. She was the breadwinner, so he had no problems with keeping some low-level super job. To top it all off, David was also the only minority with a supervisory position. So the logistics company didn't want to fire him. David was simply a shift super for the dock, had no desire to be promoted because he had absolutely no responsibilities except to post an end-of-shift report, which he had one of the receivers do for him. That was my job. For 2 years I typed this asshole's nightly reports, knowing fully well he never witnessed any of it going on. He just sat in his office eating or riding the dock on a golf cart looking for reasons to fire new people. And the worst part? He didn't even have real power. He wasn't a leader, he was a puppet pretending to be important. But in his little world, his toxic kingdom, he felt untouchable. I could see it in his eyes. He knew he had everyone under his thumb. And I hated it. I hated that I was stuck, doing his work, living in his shadow while he got away with murder. But you know what? I wasn't going to let it go on forever. I wasn't going to let this asshole ruin my career. Not anymore. But I wasn't going to let David win. You see, there's a certain kind of fire that gets lit inside you when you're pushed too far. At first, I thought I'd just get through it, keep my head down, and pretend everything was fine. But after years of being belittled, disrespected, and ignored, I knew deep down that I had to take control of my life. I couldn't just sit there and let him grind me down anymore. I had learned a valuable lesson from all of this. The best way to deal with people like David wasn't to confront them directly. No, that's exactly what they want, to see you lose your temper, to see you flail. So instead, I decided to outlast him. I told myself I wasn't going to let this man, who was nothing more than a bully with power, control my life any longer. I decided I'd play the long game. And playing the long game, that meant focusing on myself, improving my skills, and earning the respect of those around me. Slowly, very slowly, I began to climb. For 3 years, that was my life. I worked tirelessly, maybe too tirelessly, but I was determined to make my mark, to prove I could do more than what David had pigeonholed me into. The more I worked, the more my colleagues began to recognize my abilities, my dedication, my worth. And before long, I was promoted. Not just any promotion either. I was promoted to head of a different department, far away from David's toxic grip. When I first found out, I'll admit, a part of me was overjoyed. It felt like I had finally escaped the prison I had been in for so long. I was free. No more looking over my shoulder every time I passed David's office. No more worrying about his next cruel comment or sarcastic jibe. But as happy as I was to finally break free, I knew the real victory wouldn't come from just moving on. It would come from watching him burn. And I wasn't going to let go of that just yet. David had no idea that while he was still running the docks with his golf cart and his pompous attitude, I was quietly documenting everything. Every mistake he made. Every embarrassing decision he called management. And believe me, there were plenty. I wasn't going to let it slip, not for 1 second. He thought I was gone, out of his way, but in reality, I was taking notes, building a file, just waiting for the right moment. He had no clue that I had been watching him for years. Every failure, every lapse in judgment, every little crack in the facade of his leadership. I can't tell you how satisfying it was. The guy had made my life a living hell for years, but I wasn't just going to let him get away with it. I was watching him every single day. He was still doing the same thing he'd always done, belittling people, taking credit for other people's work, and making decisions that hurt the company just as much as they hurt the people around him. I could have confronted him, but I didn't want to get down in the mud with him. No, I was going to play this the smart way. I'd be patient. I had grown stronger, more capable, and I had learned how to maneuver around the toxic environment he'd built. But what was coming next? Well, that's the part where things would start to get interesting. And trust me, David wouldn't see it coming. And then one day, everything changed. You know that feeling when it's like the universe finally aligns and all the pieces fall into place? It was like that for me, but 1,000 times more intense. Move Easy Logistics Company, my company, decided that the department I had left behind, the one David oversaw, was falling apart. Things weren't running smoothly. Operations were chaotic, and they needed someone to fix it, someone who could step in and restore order. Guess who got that job? Me. I still remember the moment the call came. The words were almost too good to be true. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. Inside, I was already thinking about the sweet, sweet moment that was coming. When I walked into that office for the first time as his boss, the change in the atmosphere was electric. You know how when you walk into a room and you can just feel the air shift? That's what happened. The smug grin David always wore? It disappeared in an instant. His face drained of color, and I could see the panic creeping in. He knew. He knew exactly what that job meant for him. For years, I had watched him make life miserable for everyone around him. Now I had the power to ruin him. All those years of documentation, of quietly observing him fail, of collecting every piece of evidence. It was all coming to fruition. I could feel the weight of it, but I didn't act just yet. No, I played it cool. I knew this wasn't the time to rush in. No, the best way to take him down was to be patient. David had spent years making mistakes. He was too arrogant to realize just how many times he had screwed up. He was too consumed with his own ego to notice that I was quietly gathering everything I needed to end his little reign of terror. I played the long game, and for 3 months, every single night, I showed up early to monitor his shifts. I didn't rush in. I didn't make a scene. I watched. I observed. I documented. Every mistake he made, every rule he bent, every person he humiliated, I saw it. And I collected it. I watched him make the same stupid mistakes over and over again. And each time I noted it. I watched as he rode around in his golf cart, pretending to supervise, but really just looking for something or someone to blame. I could see it all so clearly now. His incompetence, his laziness, his total lack of respect for the people who actually did the work. Every time he messed up, I got a little closer. The company was watching him, but I knew they weren't paying close enough attention. They weren't seeing what I was seeing. They weren't seeing the petty tyrant behind the desk who couldn't lead if his life depended on it. And I wasn't going to let this go. Every mistake he made was another brick in the wall. Every time he mismanaged the team, I took note. Every time he made one of his ridiculous decisions, I recorded it. I was building a case piece by piece, and he never knew. But I did. And when the time came, when everything was lined up, I'd be the one to pull the trigger. I wasn't doing this out of some petty vengeance. Well, maybe I was a little bit, But more than anything, I was doing it because I knew that one day, when he slipped, I would be the one standing there with the truth in my hands. And when that day came, I would make sure he knew exactly how much damage he had caused. The game was over for him. I just needed to wait for the right moment to make my move. And then it happened. The day I had been waiting for, the day I had planned for months, no years, finally came. My hands were steady, but my heart, it was racing. I had prepared for this moment, every detail calculated. Every word I was about to say rehearsed in my mind 1,000 times. But when he walked into that office, I kept my face neutral. I wanted him to think this was just another casual conversation. I wanted him to feel comfortable, to believe nothing had changed. And for a moment, he did. He walked in, oblivious, thinking he was going to get yet another mundane task or some meaningless update about the department. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I had been gathering evidence for months, waiting for the right moment. And in that moment, I was armed with everything I needed to destroy him. I didn't waste a second. I didn't need to. The moment he sat down, I locked eyes with him and said, "David, it's just not working out." I could see his face shift just the tiniest bit. At first, he didn't react. He didn't think much of it, probably thought I was going to go on about some minor issue or a shift in plans. But the words sank in. I could see it in his eyes. The panic, the disbelief, the dawning realization that this wasn't just a chat. This wasn't just some casual meeting. This was it. This was the moment he had been dreading. The moment everything he had built, the lies, the power, the manipulation, would come crashing down. There it was, the termination letter. The piece of paper that was going to end everything for him. He could hardly hold it steady in his hands. I saw it in the way he reached for it, the unsteady grip, like he already knew what was inside. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it for him. No, I wasn't going to allow him the chance to plead his case, to justify everything he had done. For years, he had crushed people beneath his thumb, humiliated them, belittled them. And now the tables have turned. This was my time. His reign of terror was over. I was in charge now, and the power I had was absolute. I watched as he tried to plead with me, as he stumbled over his words, grasping for any excuse, any justification. But there was nothing he could say that would change the outcome. All those years, he had used his position to ruin people's lives, to make them feel small. And now it was his turn. He had become the very thing he had spent his career making others feel, helpless, humiliated. He was the one now sitting in that chair, facing the consequences of his actions. And there was no escape. He tried. He really did. He tried to justify himself, to make me see things from his point of view. But there was nothing left to say. The damage had been done. And now I had the power. All those years of suffering under his reign, all those nights of silently enduring his cruelty, it had led to this moment. He was done. It was over. He was going to lose everything he had worked for, and I was the one who was going to make sure of it. No more hiding behind his title. No more hiding behind his position. This time, the truth was coming for him. I don't know if he understood at that moment what he had lost. Maybe he never did. But I didn't care. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. And it was about everyone he had ever wronged. Because, in the end, I was the one who got the last word. And I wasn't going to let him forget that. He was out. Looking back, I can't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. Maybe it was because of how much he had hurt people. Maybe it was because of how he made my life a living hell for so long. But in the end, I didn't just get revenge. I got something even more valuable. I got my career back. I got my dignity back. And I got to see him fall from grace. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about taking someone down in the moment. It's about outlasting them. It's about proving that no matter how much they try to break you, they can't stop you from reaching the top. So, what's the lesson here? Don't let people like David break you. If you keep your head down, work hard, and stay patient, eventually the tables will turn. And when they do, you'll have the power to make things right. Sometimes, revenge isn't about acting on anger. It's about waiting, building, and letting time be your ally.